Hey, strong moms, welcome to day 4. So glad to see you. Um, I'm excited about today. This is a really important lesson that is going to bring together those first 3 lessons that we talked about, which was the ins and outs of the protocol, um, the thought model, and hormones. Today's lesson is going to bring those together, and it is my goal that you walk away from today's lesson with a full and comprehensive understanding of what it means to be truly physically hungry, and that you can identify when you're feeling sensations of hunger, but it is not really hunger. So, the agenda for today is to distinguish between true hunger and false hunger, and then we're going to talk about what to do when we are experiencing false hunger, and then we're going to do a day 5 overview. You guys ready? Let's get started. So let me ask you, when was the last time you felt or experienced true hunger? Think about it. True hunger. Do you know what I mean when I say the word true hunger? Is that a word that you can easily identify with? I would say that most of us in today's modern world, we have not experienced true hunger. True hunger meaning that our energy reserves have been depleted and our body literally, physiologically requires food in order to keep producing energy. That would be defined as true hunger. We're really lucky that we've never really experienced true hunger. But therein is the problem, because our brains are now confused. We have learned to associate other physiological feelings with hunger. It's interesting if you think about it. I did a little research because I wanted to know how many calories the average human being is carrying on their body. So with this idea that if we're physically feeling hungry, but we know that we're not truly energy depleted, how long would it actually take to become energy depleted? It's a question that many scientists have asked, but it's hard to develop a methodology to find an accurate answer to that question. So the research kind of gives generalizations and ideas based on autopsies, based on metabolic testing that they've done, and they've found that the average human could live for about 15 to 20 days without any food at all. That's not a drop of nutrition at all. So that's not even drinking milk. It's no energy consumption at all, about 15 to 20 days. And that the average human body, now this was a range, the average human body has anywhere between, and the average human body, I'm talking about someone who is average shape, so not necessarily someone who is obese, and not someone that is on the other end of the very thin scale, but an average. Anywhere in your fat cells, you're storing between 30,000 kilocalories of energy and 100,000 kilocalories of energy. So it's interesting to know that when we are physically feeling hungry, it's a very slim chance that our body is energy depleted to the point of panic. But yet, how often have you felt that panic when you're hungry? Yeah? Okay, so true hunger, we can know true hunger, when you're experiencing true hunger, think of it as I need to eat now, and I will eat the most bland piece of chicken breast you have ever seen, and I'll eat it and I'll be content. That's kind of the litmus test for you to give yourself. So when you're feeling hungry, the question to ask is, if I were to eat a bland chicken breast, would I be satiated? Got it? And if the answer is no, then we can know that it's probably not true hunger, it's false hunger. Now, what does that mean exactly? So, if it's false hunger, how do I know what type of false hunger? How do I know how to fix it? And we're going to get into that. So, true hunger versus false hunger. True hunger is this: I will eat anything you put in front of me, even a bland piece of chicken breast. False hunger is the physiological experience of hunger, even when our bodies do not require the energy. That is false hunger, and that is what most of us feel most of the time. Okay, so causes of false hunger. Now it's important for us to identify what causes this false sensation of hunger. Because we are physiologically feeling hungry, it's really useful to know what is happening in our body metabolically and what is happening in our brain, so that when we experience false hunger, we can create thoughts we can deliberately choose the thoughts we want to think about that experience of hunger that will help us move on. By moving on beyond this feeling of false hunger, you will be able to fully utilize the energy in your fat cells. It will eliminate the constant snacking, and it's going to get you to the point of really understanding what it means to be hungry and what it means to be full. And these are two feelings that many of us have lost track of because we have developed the habit of constantly overeating, constantly feeding our body food, and we don't ever back up to feel hunger. You got it? You tracking? Okay, so I've pared it down to 8 experiences of false hunger, and I want to run through them with you first to tell you what they are, and then the symptoms that you might feel to help you identify whether or not this is the cause of your false hunger. So as I talk through these 8 false hunger causes, imagine in your brain the last time you felt hungry and see if you can identify that experience in one of these 8 causes. So the first one, and the one that I think most people talk about, is this idea of addiction for food. So addiction is going to show up. Addiction obviously is a cause of false hunger, and it's going to show up in your body as this intense desire for specific foods. Many of my clients who have come from a binge eating or a binge restrict background really feel intensely about certain foods. It's almost always a sugar or a carbohydrate or sometimes an alcohol that this intense feeling for food is associated with. Now, this is really at the basic level what addiction is. It's interesting because when you look at the way substances influence and impact our brain, let's use heroin for an example. Heroin triggers an intense dopamine response in your brain, and you eventually become acclimated to that. You need the dopamine. Now, dopamine is a feel-good hormone in your brain. People who are depressed are commonly unable to produce dopamine at sufficient levels, as well as serotonin, although there are extensive studies coming out now that distinguish between the 2 roles of serotonin and dopamine, and they're finding that depression and addiction really kind of triggers that dopamine receptor cell. So sugar, let me use just sugar, let me pick on sugar for a minute, actually does the exact same thing chemically in your brain as heroin in terms of the production of dopamine. And it's interesting to step back and think about the fact that we have very clever brains that are very easy to train. It only takes a few times for us to ingest a substance that spikes that dopamine that then makes us want to come right back to that substance. So if you find yourself really having this intense and passionate desire for a certain food, know that this is a classic addiction addiction symptom. There is nothing wrong with you. This does not mean you are an addict, or don't paint a vision in your head as someone who was out of control. That is not the image I want you to have. You should know that that means that your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, which was to seek pleasure. The other thing that's good to know is that throughout all of these, really we've trained our brain to respond in a certain way. And you can untrain it. You trained it to do this, so of course you can untrain it and train it to do something else. Okay, let's talk about the second one. Low blood sugar. Now, the topic of low blood sugar is something that is extensively researched and I mean really is above my pay grade in terms of ability to accurately talk about what it means to be hyper or hypoglycemic. So I'm not going to go there in this. If blood sugar is truly clinically an issue that you have, I trust your ability to consult with your doctor throughout the entire program that we are running here so that you can make sure that you're staying healthy. But low blood sugar really is just something, a word that refers to the fact that our bodies are relying on glucose for energy, and we haven't put glucose in our body recently. At that point, our body says, danger, danger, and starts triggering cortisol and stress hormones. The symptom that we get is this hangry, right? I know you guys have felt this. This is I need to eat now before I punch someone in the face. I've heard so many women say, I have low blood sugar, I need to eat something right now. Whether it's a pretzel or a cracker, whatever, I need to eat something right now. You've trained your body to have this low blood sugar response. You've trained your body to rely on a constant and steady stream of glucose for energy. And so as soon as you don't have that glucose for energy, you crash. Got it? Here's the beautiful part, and I remember the first time I felt this. If you wait a few minutes, it can take up to 20 minutes, you won't be hungry anymore. Your body wants homeostasis. So if it is searching for glucose in the bloodstream and it sends the panic signal to your brain and you don't react, your body's not going to die. Remember what we said? You have about 15 days left in you. Your body will convert over and start pulling glucose out of those fat cells, which is what we want, right? So if you start crashing, if you get a hangry, it's because you've trained your body to go into that panic mode. You got to untrain it. And for the first few days, this means you've just got to suck it up, cupcake, and be in pain. The good news is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You'll get through it. The third one, now this is a really common one I've found in men, is this experience of hunger pain, just really having this feeling of, it's like an ache in your stomach, like I need to eat now. This is also common in people, not just men, but women who binge eat. So if we're binge eating, overeating excessively, when we overeat excessively, what do we usually eat? Sugar, processed foods, fast foods, a lot of starches and flours, right? We are irritating the lining in our stomach. Interesting, huh? So once the lining in our stomach kind of starts to dissolve and become compromised, the feeling of being empty will become painful. So our body is registering these hunger pains as, oh, I need to eat. It's a hunger cue. But what's really happening is that our belly is so used to feeling full, and the lining of our stomach has been irritated and compromised from the types of foods that we've been eating, that the instant our belly is empty, completely emptied out, it's unable to deal with those stomach acids, and we are physically uncomfortable with the feeling of being full, or empty, sorry. If this is you, if you are very uncomfortable whenever you get hungry, or perhaps you feel like you're always hungry and you always need to eat, you're always getting these hunger pains, here's some new news for you. It does not hurt to have an empty belly. I'll use myself as an example. It's 5 o'clock right now in Alaska. The last meal I had was 9 p.m. yesterday. My belly's empty. I can tell that it's empty. It feels light, I guess. It just feels light. It doesn't hurt. There's no irritation. There's no pain. But I remember when I used to be a binge eater, the feeling of pain, just gnawing. And that was because the lining of my stomach was compromised and I was not used to those stomach acids in my stomach. So just know that the thought in your head that having an empty stomach actually is not uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable. If it is uncomfortable, it could very well be for, well, any of these reasons, but that we should aim to be comfortable with just having an empty stomach. I know a lot of you are probably nodding your head right now that you've experienced the first three that we've talked about. Number 4, the need for stimulation is something that I think a lot of us are going to be like, oh, hell yeah. Because really when we talk about being on this roller coaster, this emotional roller coaster where I am eating a ton, and then getting depressed and cutting back, way back, and you're always kind of self-sabotaging. You're going to be good today, but then tomorrow you have no willpower and you overeat. Can really, that experience, that roller coaster experience, can really be thought in terms of the psychological need for stimulation, and also the psychological need for distraction as well. And we're actually going to get into those specific things tomorrow. But right now, let's think about this need for stimulation and think about if you can see yourself in this. But if you're looking for stimulation through food, so again, going back to what we talked about with addiction, flour, sugar, and these processed foods that create dopamine in our brains, our brains want that excitement. I mean, our brains have evolved to seek pleasure. We want to put forth as little energy as possible and get the most pleasure in return. That's kind of our baseline primal, people sometimes call it the animal brain. If we leave it unchecked, that is what we are going to gravitate to. So if we're bored, or if we're feeling just kind of down, or maybe things didn't go the way we thought, if we're feeling any type of a negative experience, or if we need some stimulation of some sort, we're going to turn to food if we let our brains do it. I'm looking at my notes here to make sure that I don't veer off. It creates a vicious, basically this is a vicious cycle, because what we're doing is we're pumping our brain full of dopamine with the sugar. But the sugar effect, as we all know, does not last. In fact, the pleasure that we get from food really is only about 10 minutes. Pretty much as soon as you're done eating the food, the pleasure is gone. And so your brain goes into the dumps, essentially. You have this high, and a low. That's where the roller coaster comes in. Now I just want more. And if you've noticed, if you've ever been in this binge cycle roller coaster, eventually you'll get to the point where you need more and more food in order to be able to obtain this high that you are so desperately seeking, just like what we know about narcotic or alcohol. It functions very similar in our brains. So, a need for stimulation. So, if you're feeling hungry, agitated, like, oh, I want something, I don't know what I want, ask yourself, am I bored? Is my brain saying, come on, give me some dopamine, give me something to focus my energy on? So, observe it and ask yourself if this is what's happening and see what answers or responses you get from yourself. Another really common reason why we eat when we are not truly hungry is fatigue. And if you're a mother, you are like, amen, sister, right? I think I slept 6 hours last night. I'm exhausted. This can be fatigue. Oftentimes, my clients will identify it as a trigger in the sense that I'm really tired, and I know that when I'm really tired, it's going to trigger an urge to overeat or an urge to eat when I'm not hungry. So, if it's helpful to think of fatigue as a trigger for you, do it, because then you'll be able to plan ahead. Oh, I know that I'm going to a concert tomorrow night and I'm probably not going to get to bed until really late, and then I have to get up early the next morning. I'm going to be tired. I know my brain is going to want to overeat or choose foods that do not serve me and my health goals. So you can plan ahead if you know that that's a trigger for you. The other really, and then the other thing that I would add with fatigue is just set a boundary for yourself. Just set a rule and call it good. That when dinner is over and the dishes are clean and it's time for bed, don't eat. Just don't eat because you're not hungry. You're tired. Just don't eat. So if you can just set that rule, then your brain doesn't even have to decide. It's just what you do. Another cue that will falsely cue our hunger, physiological experiences of hunger, is if we smell, think, or see food. Now, this was, if you're in Alaska right now and if you've been to the Alaska State Fair, this one is hitting you hard. I was just there the other day. Let me tell you, those elephant ears smelled really good. Again, going into a situation where you know that food is going to be tantalizing and in front of you, plan ahead. Think about what you want. Most importantly, think about how you want to feel physically when you are done with that event. That's exactly what I did with the state fair. I thought about how did I want to feel when I was walking out of that state fair with my 2 children. I did not want to feel bloated. I did not want to feel tired or lethargic. I did not want to just go home and go to bed, right? I wanted to feel good and energized. I know from experience that that elephant ear would put me straight down into the dumps and I would want to go to sleep. I would have such a sugar crash. Knowing that fact, I walked right by the stand. It was just not an option. But I had to use my prefrontal cortex to plan ahead of time. Are you guys seeing a trend here with this? Planning ahead of time? Another thing just to know, our reward center in our brains around food is triggered seriously by smell, by seeing food, by thinking about food. I mean, this is not a secret. I remember working at a fast food restaurant when I was a kid. They put it was like a little scent cone. I don't know how else to describe it. They put it in the ovens because then when they were baking the bread, the smell, it was an artificially smelling bread thing. Not only were you actually smelling the real bread, but it was just intensified. They knew the psychology of the power of smell. Think about that the next time you drive by Burger King. You can have your windows rolled up and you will still smell that fryer. That is not an accident. Habituation. Let's talk about that one really quick. So habituation to regularity. Now, if you remember yesterday, we talked about the hormones ghrelin and leptin is the hormone that helps you feel full, and ghrelin is the hormone that creates a feeling of hunger. Now, ghrelin is made in your stomach, but it signals and communicates with your hypothalamus. So your brain learns, oh, it's 7 a.m. I'm looking for the ghrelin. It must be hungry. And that signals to your stomach to make ghrelin. So if we have a very set schedule and routine for eating, we will feel hungry. We will feel a physiological experience of hunger around those times. It takes maybe a week or so to adapt to this schedule, but it's another false hunger. You actually may not be hungry at all, but yet you'll still want to eat because it's that time to eat. Now, is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? I would say that, in today's culture, depending on your schedule, your routine, play it out for yourself, but know that, and I'm thinking specifically about an example that one of the moms on the Strong Mom Tribe commented on our Facebook, which was that by intermittent fasting, she's not having breakfast with her children. And that feels rude. It feels uncomfortable. And I can see that. I can see where this is a tradition. This is something that we do together. I would say that probably the benefit of eating together, of holding these traditions and sharing a meal. I don't know if you guys can hear my toddler, but she's yelling at the door. It's a little distracting. Hold on. Okay, I have a co-host with me. Where was I? The habituation. So this idea that, we eat together, this is a routine. Maybe you have lunch with your coworkers. Would they think I'm being rude? Just kind of step back and question, is it the fact that we're eating a meal together that is the value, or is it the fact that we're together? Is that the value? So if you run into some kind of stigma around not eating meals at a regularly timed pace, ask yourself, what's the purpose of eating this meal? Is this so that we can be together, or is it that we can sit around and consume food? Here's the other thing. To avoid habituation of meals, try to mix it up a little bit. If you have that amount of flexibility. For example, if you're practicing the intermittent fasting, you can rotate between a 4-hour eating window and an 8-hour eating window, and you can go back and forth day by day. Most importantly, though, keep in mind that if it's time to eat and you're not hungry, don't eat. There's no need to eat. Yeah, she's not wearing any pants. Neither am I, but you would never know that. No, I'm kidding. So most importantly, to avoid this habituation piece, if it's time to eat and you're not hungry, don't eat. Okay, the last one. This is the other one that I feel like plays a big role for those of us who have experienced binge eating or emotional overeating, is that we use it as a distraction from things that we don't like. When I say don't like, I mean emotions or feelings that make us uncomfortable. So when we use food to distract us from a negative feeling, I call that a buffer, a buffering. We're blocking ourselves from experiencing the true reason why we are uncomfortable. Let me give an example of a distraction that's commonly used. I had a really hard day at work. I'm exhausted. I have to go home and take care of the kids. I'm going to sit here and eat a bowl of ice cream. Oh, look, here's my other daughter.
I lost the baby.
Sorry. Meet my family.
Hi, I'm the cool child.
Thank you.
Do you want down?
So the distraction piece, this happens to us often. But it happens in a way that's almost unconscious. So this is a situation where perhaps...
Let's talk about this.
I even put a note outside my door this time, you guys. The world collapses when mommy disappears. Oh my God. Okay, so the distraction. Remember when we talked about the thoughts that go through our head? We have over 60,000 thoughts that are going through our brain every single day. So you very well may be using food to distract yourself from a thought that creates a negative feeling, and you are not even aware of what that thought is. Because you're using the food to distract yourself from it. Got it? So, if you are, how do you know that you're using food as a distraction? Oftentimes, when we're doing that, we just go unconscious while we're eating. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced maybe eating cookies and then you get to the bottom of the container and you're like, where did they go? What just happened? Um, you are, because you're using food as a distraction or a buffer, you're using it as a way to disconnect from your emotions, from your thoughts, from your body. It's really an escape of sorts. So that's kind of a good indicator that you're using as a distraction. And yeah, if that is you, then that's an opportunity to step back and say, wow, yesterday I used that food. I ate all of that food and I wasn't even aware of it. Why did I do that? What was I thinking? Like, what was going on? Oh, my husband came home and he was really agitated and I didn't want to deal with him. Right? So again, the sometimes we can figure out the cause behind our behaviors by looking at them as a symptom versus the disease. The thought being the cause or the disease, and then the overeating or the identifying with the false hunger as the symptom. I hope that makes sense. Trying to put it in a way that's useful and applicable. So the distraction, I would actually say that all of these, if we are continually reinforcing our false hunger cues, there is going to be an experience of depression and anxiety just naturally built into that, because your brain is very smart. It recognizes the fact that you are gravitating towards foods that increase your dopamine, and foods that will raise your insulin. And those foods are not going to give you a permanent high. Wherever there is a high with the foods, there will be a dramatic low. That roller coaster is depressing. It makes us anxious. It creates a feeling of, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just stop? I don't know why I ate that. This is so frustrating. Our natural response usually is just to try to employ willpower to butt up against this. I'm just gonna stop. I'm just gonna go do a highly restrictive diet, or I'll hire a coach that will tell me exactly what to eat, and I'm only going to eat that. But the whole reason why you got to the place that you are in is because you have so cleverly developed a habit that helps your brain go unconscious, keeps your brain from experiencing negative feelings, keeps your brain from having to work hard for energy. Really, you've developed habits that support exactly what your brain wants. It doesn't mean that there's anything that's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're going crazy. It doesn't mean you don't have self-control. It just means your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, but it's not doing it in the way that reinforces the long-term goals. You can still get that result for your brain. You just have to get it in a way that supports it and helps it to grow and to continue to achieve your next level of success. So, knowing that by appealing to our false hunger cues, we're just perpetuating this roller coaster. It'll cause us to slowly creep up in our weight inevitably, and then we can get into this feeling of loss of control. When a client tells me that they have issues with food, I know immediately that it's not about the food. It's never about the food. This was a process that I had to dig so deep for in myself, because I was there. I was so addicted to food, and so feeling out of control. And I knew that there had to be a better way, but I didn't understand why I was doing this. I went to therapy. I thought, perhaps I've inherited these maladaptive beliefs from my mother. When in doubt, let's just blame our moms. But that thought didn't get me anywhere. I read book after book after book. Perhaps I need to go to a hypnotherapist. Perhaps I need to go get EMT. There was just so many options that I pursued, so many books that I read, so many coaches that I worked with. And then it was just a shocking realization to begin to understand that the whole reason why I was appealing to these false hunger cues was because my brain just didn't want to be uncomfortable. My brain just wanted to be comfortable and wanted to be lazy, and it wanted to get the most pleasure possible. And food was a really socially acceptable way to do it. I'm not going to go try heroin. I don't know about you, but brownies were a little more accessible. So I'm telling you this to assure you that if you're stuck in a rut of being confused and frustrated by this fact that you have been appealing to these false hunger cues for so long, that you're not crazy, and that it's not because of your mother, and it's not because you're a hopeless addict. It's because you're simply developing habits that reinforce this idea for yourself that life should be pleasurable, we should feel good all the time, and it should be easy. I'm going to leave that concept there, though, because we're going to dive even deeper into it tomorrow. For today, for day 4, I hope you guys are doing your homework. I don't want to burden you or weigh you down with it, but this is the part where you apply the work. I can teach you until I'm blue in the face. If you don't apply it, it's not going to work. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of yours. So please, even if you don't have the time to do the homework today, bookmark it in your brain and know that it's something that needs to get done. This is where the change happens. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you do it consistently, it will happen. I guarantee. So here's your homework for today. We're going to apply what we've just discussed with the false hunger cues to the thought model that we learned 2 days ago. So here's what I want you to do. You'll find on the Strong Mom Tribe online portal our homework, which is essentially you're going to solve these feelings of false hunger ahead of time. You're going to use your prefrontal cortex to plan for this experience of false hunger, and you're going to put an end to it ahead of time. This process of planning ahead of time keeps you from going unconscious. And again, I keep using the word prefrontal cortex, but that's the decision part, the decision-making part of your brain. Activates it so that when you get put in this tempting situation that would normally trigger you to experience desire, you can put a stop to that. You'll have more control over it because you've already thought ahead of time with your higher brain or your prefrontal cortex how you're going to handle the situation. This is like very basic habit forming psychology 101. It's not new or revolutionary information. It's certainly not something that I invented, but it is something that I had to practice every day to make it work. Again, I can tell you all this information. If you don't apply it, it's not going to work. So your homework, of course, is still to continue your food journal, continue adhering to the protocol. And now I want you to take, there's a worksheet on the website, and it will ask you, out of the 8 definitions of false hunger that we've covered, what are the top 3 that you see yourself doing most of the time? And So you're going to decide what those top 3 are, and then you're going to decide ahead of time. You're going to decide right now, the next time that false hunger cues in my body, what am I going to do? What thought am I going to have? So this is, let me give you an example really quick of how this will work out. Remember the CTFAR. So circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. Yeah? Again, this is all on the Strong Mom Tribe membership page, online community forum. So if you forget this, you can always refer back to it. So your C, so you've listed the top 3 kind of false hungers, right? So we're just going to assume, let's say one of your false hungers is fatigue. When you feel tired, you physiologically register it in your body as hunger. So let's say that the circumstance is fatigue. Okay, so I'm predicting ahead of time. I'm not tired right now. I'm doing this planning ahead of time. I know that this is something that I do. This is going to happen to me. So next time this happens to me, this is the process that I'm going to go through. So fatigue, the thought, next time I feel tired and I want to eat, the thought I'm going to have about that is, let's see, what's a thought that feels authentic to me? How about I'm tired? I don't need to eat. I'm tired. I'm feeling hungry because I'm tired, right? Just the fact. I mean, that's a fact. Just the very, just thinking the fact sometimes can be enough. Okay, so that's the thought I'm going to have. The feeling that's going to result from that is going to be confidence. Like, okay. Confidence meaning, I understand why I'm tired. I'm sitting here on the sofa. I'm watching Game of Thrones. I know there's a pint of Ben & Jerry's in the freezer. I want to eat it. I'm not hungry at all. It must be because I'm tired. That makes sense. Okay, now I can be confident in just letting that Ben & Jerry's exist in the freezer. The action that I would take is to let the ice cream stay, right? Or let's say not eat. The result is that I'd go to bed, right? I'm not eating. Like, I'm not going to stay up 20 minutes later and watch the clip of Danny and John in the season finale over and over again. I totally did that. Whatever. So by not eating, I'm not going to stay up even later, right? I'm probably going to go to bed. So my action is go to bed. And then the result is, like, I get sleep. And look at that. We're going to reinforce it. So I felt tired. I don't need to eat. And I got sleep. I felt good afterwards. So again, you're planning this ahead of time. So you're going to identify your 3 big false hunger cues. And you're going to decide right now, the next time I feel that false hunger, how am I going to respond? So now I know the next time I'm feeling tired and I want to eat the Ben & Jerry's, I'm going to check in with my body and decide, Katie, this isn't really hunger. This is being tired. Go to bed. And I'm going to do it. Yeah? You guys feeling me? Okay. If you're struggling with the thought model, with the circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result, let me know. Like, I would so happily walk you through this. If you take nothing away from these 2 weeks, this needs to be it. The thought model needs to be it. Not just on a conceptual level. Practice it, practice it, practice it, practice it. Yes? Okay, so what are we doing tomorrow? I talked actually a lot about, I kind of gave hints about our brain and what our brain gravitates towards and why it does that. And we call that the motivational triad. So we're going to go over the motivational triad and explain to you some concepts that will help you get a better understanding of why we tend to choose the foods that don't fully support our desired results. So that's it. I hope you guys also got the note that we're having our coaching call on Tuesday at 5:30 Alaska time. If you have questions, please send them to me in advance. just so that I can queue people up. I'll call on you at the call so that you can talk. Like we'll have a dialogue, a conversation, but please send them to me in advance so that I can have an estimated idea of how long the call is going to be, because I want to be respectful of your time as well. And the call will be recorded. So if you cannot attend the call live, you can still send your questions in. And even though you won't be on the call physically, I'll do my best to answer it, and then you can listen to the call later. Alrighty, guys. Have a great day. Bye.